It's Monday morning in Berlin, but instead of the usual rush hour chaos, the streets are unusually calm. Coffee shops are buzzing with people who look relaxed, content, because in this version of Germany, nobody's heading to work today. Welcome to a world where Germany has made the 4-day work week permanent, and the ripple effects are about to blow your mind. Now, before you roll your eyes and think another utopian fantasy, let me hit you with some facts that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about work and productivity. In 2024, Germany completed the most comprehensive 4-day work week trial in European history. 45 companies, 6 months, real businesses with real bottom lines on the line. And here's where it gets absolutely wild. 73% of the participating companies decided to make the schedule permanent. But here's the plot twist that nobody saw coming. Over 90% of employees reported improvements in well-being, life satisfaction, and work-life balance. They were getting an average of 38 extra minutes of sleep per week and increased physical activity. Their stress levels plummeted, their health improved, and, this is the kicker, there was a 65% reduction in absenteeism due to illness and personal leave. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about productivity? Surely working less means producing less, right? Oh, you sweet summer child. That's exactly what 80% of German business leaders thought too. They looked at this data and basically said, nope, not buying it. This is where things get fascinating, because we're witnessing a fundamental clash between two completely different philosophies of work. On one side, you have the traditional German industrial mindset, the idea that more hours equals more output, that presence equals productivity. It's the I can see you, therefore you're working mentality that's been the backbone of German economic success for decades. But on the other side, you have this emerging post-industrial model that says, what if we focused on results instead of hours? What if we optimized for energy and focus instead of just time spent in a chair? And here's why this matters more than just German office workers getting an extra day off. Germany is facing a labor shortage crisis. They need 7 million skilled workers by 2035 just to maintain their current economic output. They're competing globally for talent, and right now, they're losing that competition to countries offering better work-life balance. So let's play out this scenario. What if Germany actually did it? What if they became the first major economy to make the 4-day work week the national standard? First, let's talk about the immediate economic impact. The skeptics aren't wrong to worry, there would be short-term disruption. Manufacturing schedules would need to be restructured. Customer service models would require overhauls. Some sectors, like healthcare and emergency services, would face complex logistical challenges. But here's what the data from existing trials tells us. 77% of workers reported increased productivity when working a 4-day week, and get this. Microsoft Japan saw a 40% boost in productivity during their 4-day work week experiment. Think about it logically. When you know you only have 4 days to get everything done, what happens? You eliminate the nonsense. Those 2-hour meetings that could have been emails? Gone. The endless coffee breaks and office gossip sessions? Drastically reduced. You enter what psychologists call a flow state, that zone where you're completely focused and operating at peak efficiency. But the real game changer wouldn't be just the productivity gains. It would be Germany's transformation into a talent magnet. Imagine being a skilled software engineer, a data scientist, or a renewable energy specialist. You're choosing between job offers in Silicon Valley, London, and Berlin. Suddenly, Berlin offers you the same salary, but with a 4-day work week guaranteed by law. Where are you going to go? This is where it gets really interesting because the social implications would be massive. Picture German society restructuring itself around this new rhythm. The tourism industry would explode as people have more time and energy for leisure activities. Local businesses would see a boom on that extra day off. The housing market might actually stabilize, as people are less stressed about commuting and more willing to live in smaller cities if they only have to make the trip 4 days a week. But let's dig deeper into the family dynamics. German birth rates have been declining for decades. It's one of their biggest long-term economic challenges. What happens when both parents suddenly have an extra day to spend with their children? When work stress decreases and family time increases, we might see a generation of German children who grow up with more present, less stressed parents. The environmental impact alone could be staggering. 1 less commute day per week for millions of people. Office buildings requiring 20% less energy. The carbon footprint reduction would be significant, not just for Germany, but as a model for other countries to follow. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. The opposition isn't just being stubborn, they have legitimate concerns that we need to take seriously. The manufacturing sector, which is the backbone of the German economy, operates on incredibly tight margins and complex supply chains. BMW can't just tell Toyota, "Hey, we'll get your parts to you when we feel like it because our workers are only here 4 days a week." Global competitiveness requires consistent, reliable production schedules. Service industries face their own challenges. If German banks are only open 4 days a week, but international markets operate 5 days, how do you maintain your position as a European financial hub? If your customer service is only available 80% of the time your competitors offer, how do you retain clients? And here's the deeper economic question: what if this becomes a luxury that only wealthy economies can afford? What if Germany's 4-day work week becomes a competitive disadvantage against countries willing to work longer hours for lower wages? But here's where the synthesis comes in, the beautiful middle ground that nobody's talking about. What if the 4-day work week isn't just about working less, but about working differently? What if it forces a technological revolution that actually makes Germany more competitive, not less? Think about it. When labor becomes more expensive, which it effectively does when you reduce working hours, companies invest in automation, AI, and efficiency technologies. Germany could become the global leader in workplace productivity technology simply because they had to be. We're already seeing this happen. Companies in the German trial didn't just give people a day off and hope for the best. They redesigned their entire workflow processes. They invested in better software, eliminated redundant tasks, and created more efficient communication systems. They were forced to innovate, and that innovation made them more competitive, not less. The global implications of this would be profound. If Germany, Europe's largest economy, the world's fourth largest economy, successfully implements a nationwide 4-day work week, it doesn't just change Germany. It changes the global conversation about work. Suddenly, every other developed nation is facing pressure from their own workers. If Germany can do it, why can't we? The competitive advantage becomes not just economic, but social and political. Countries that offer better work-life balance attract better talent, which drives innovation, which creates economic growth. But here's the question that keeps me up at night: are we ready for this level of change? The 4-day work week isn't just about scheduling, it's about fundamentally redefining our relationship with work, productivity, and success. It's about moving from a culture that values busyness to one that values effectiveness, from measuring inputs to measuring outcomes. And that's a psychological shift that goes way beyond just policy changes. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly rested? When was the last time you had enough time to pursue a hobby, maintain friendships, or just think without the constant pressure of work deadlines hanging over your head? The German trial participants reported something that money can't buy. They felt human again. They had time to cook real meals, exercise regularly, spend quality time with family, and pursue interests outside of work. They literally slept better, and we're not talking about subjective reports here. German workers gave hair samples and wore smartwatches to gauge the health benefits, providing concrete physiological evidence of improved well-being. This raises a profound question about what we're optimizing for as a society. Are we optimizing for maximum economic output, or are we optimizing for human flourishing? And here's the twist. What if those two things aren't actually in conflict? The most successful companies in the German trial didn't see the 4-day work week as a cost to be managed. They saw it as an investment in their most valuable asset, their people. When people are healthier, happier, and more energized, they bring their best selves to work. They're more creative, more collaborative, and more committed to their company's success. But let's be real about the challenges ahead. Even if Germany decided tomorrow to make this permanent, the implementation would be incredibly complex. You'd need to restructure social security systems that are based on traditional work schedules. Labor laws would need complete overhauls. International trade agreements might need to be renegotiated. The ripple effects would touch every aspect of German society. And what about the transition period? You can't just flip a switch and transform an entire economy overnight. Some industries would adapt quickly: tech companies, consulting firms, creative agencies. Others would struggle: manufacturing, healthcare, retail. The uneven adoption could create serious economic disruption in the short term. Here's what I find most fascinating about this whole debate. It's not really about the 4-day work week at all. It's about control, trust, and the future of human potential. The companies that are resistant to the 4-day work week often have a fundamental trust issue. They don't trust their employees to be productive without constant supervision. They equate presence with productivity because that's what they can measure and control. But the companies that embraced the 4-day work week discovered something revolutionary: when you treat people like adults, when you focus on outcomes instead of hours, when you prioritize results over presenteeism, people step up. They become more accountable, more creative, more committed to success. This brings us to a bigger question about the future of work itself. We're living through the most rapid technological transformation in human history. AI is automating routine tasks, remote work is eliminating geographical constraints, and the gig economy is redefining traditional employment relationships. In this context, clinging to the 40-hour work week, a relic from the Industrial Revolution, seems almost quaint. We're using 19th century work structures to navigate 21st century challenges. Does that make sense to anyone? But here's where it gets really exciting. What if Germany's 4-day work week experiment is just the beginning? What if it's the first step toward a complete reimagining of how humans and technology collaborate? Picture this: AI handles routine tasks, automation manages repetitive processes, and humans focus on creativity, relationship building, and strategic thinking. In that world, the quality of human input becomes far more important than the quantity of hours worked. The 4-day work week wouldn't be a luxury, it would be a necessity for maintaining the kind of high-level human performance that adds real value in an automated world. The German pilot data supports this vision. Companies saw no effect on revenues despite reduced working hours, while employees reported higher work intensity. They weren't working less, they were working smarter, more focused, and more intentionally. But let's address the global equity issue that nobody wants to talk about. If wealthy countries like Germany implement 4-day work weeks while developing nations continue with longer work schedules, do we create a new form of global inequality? Do we risk creating a two-tiered world where some people work 4 days a week in comfortable offices, while others work 6 or 7 days in less favorable conditions? This is where the German experiment could either be a beacon of progress or a symbol of privilege. The key is whether the productivity gains and technological innovations that make the 4-day work week possible can be shared globally, or whether they remain concentrated in already wealthy economies. Here's my prediction. If Germany successfully implements a nationwide 4-day work week, it won't just change Germany, it will trigger a global race to the top in terms of work-life balance and productivity innovation. Countries will compete not just on wages or tax rates, but on quality of life. The nations that figure out how to maximize human potential while minimizing burnout will attract the best talent, which will drive innovation, which will create economic advantages that compound over time. And the technologies and systems developed to make the 4-day work week possible, better project management software, more efficient communication tools, smarter automation systems, these innovations will spread globally, potentially making shorter work weeks feasible even in developing economies. So what does this mean for you right now, wherever you are in the world? First, it means that the conversation about work-life balance is about to get a lot more serious. The German data provides concrete evidence that you don't have to choose between productivity and well-being, you can have both. Second, it means that the skills that matter most in the future are the uniquely human ones: creativity, empathy, strategic thinking, relationship building. These are skills that actually improve when you're well-rested, less stressed, and have time for life outside of work. And third, it means that if you're in a position to influence workplace policies, whether as a manager, business owner, or employee advocate, you now have real data to support arguments for more flexible, human-centered approaches to work. But here's the question that I want you to really think about. What would you do with an extra day every week? I'm serious. Right now, close your eyes for a second and imagine having every Friday completely free. No work emails, no meetings, no deadlines. What would you do with that time? How would it change your relationships, your health, your personal growth, your contribution to your community? Because that's what this is really about. It's not just about working less, it's about living more. The German 4-day work week trial reveals something profound about human nature. When we're given the trust and freedom to manage our own productivity, most of us rise to the challenge. When we're treated like adults rather than children who need constant supervision, we actually become more responsible, not less. And when we have time to recharge, to pursue interests outside of work, to maintain relationships and hobbies and physical health, we bring our best selves to our professional lives. We become more creative, more collaborative, more resilient, and more committed to meaningful work. The resistance to the 4-day work week isn't really about economics or productivity, it's about letting go of control. It's about trusting people to be responsible for their own output. It's about measuring success by results rather than hours logged. And here's the thing. This transition is going to happen whether traditional business leaders want it or not. The data is too compelling, the competitive advantages too significant, and the human benefits too profound to ignore. The question isn't whether the 4-day work week will become mainstream, it's whether Germany will lead that transition or get left behind by more agile economies that embrace change faster. The pilot program participants didn't just stumble into success. They redesigned their entire approach to work. They eliminated inefficiencies, invested in better tools, and created cultures focused on outcomes rather than activity. They proved that working smarter isn't just a buzzword, it's a measurable, achievable reality. But perhaps the most important finding from the German trial isn't about productivity or profitability, it's about human dignity. In a world where burnout rates are skyrocketing, where mental health issues are epidemic, where people feel increasingly disconnected from meaningful work and authentic relationships, the 4-day work week offers something precious, the possibility of being fully human while still being professionally successful. The participants didn't just report better work-life balance. They reported feeling more like themselves. They had time to think, to create, to connect, to contribute to their communities in ways that extended beyond their job descriptions. This brings us to the ultimate question: what kind of society do we want to build? Do we want a society where people exist primarily to serve economic systems, where human worth is measured by productivity metrics, where life is divided into work time and leftover time? Or do we want a society where economic systems exist to serve human potential, where productivity is a means to an end rather than an end in itself, where work is one important aspect of a full, rich, meaningful life? The German 4-day work week trial suggests that we might not have to choose, that we might be able to create economic systems that are both highly productive and deeply humane, that we might be able to build a world where success is measured not just by what we produce, but by how we live. So, what if Germany made the 4-day work week permanent? They might just show the rest of the world that the future of work isn't about working more, it's about working better. They might prove that the most competitive economies aren't the ones that extract the most hours from their people, but the ones that unlock the most potential. And they might demonstrate that the choice between economic success and human flourishing is a false choice, that in the 21st century, the most successful societies will be the ones that figure out how to maximize both. The data is in. The pilot is complete. The choice is clear. The question now isn't whether the 4-day work week works, we know it does. The question is whether we have the courage to embrace a future that works better for everyone. What do you think? Are you ready for a world where working less actually means achieving more? Where productivity and well-being aren't enemies, but allies? Where Sunday night dread becomes a thing of the past because you know you're heading into a work schedule that actually sustains your humanity? The future is calling. Germany might just be the first to answer.